Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome once again to the Egotistical Podcast after a brief hiatus of a few years. Is that the word? Hiatus? Hiatus? I'm not exactly sure. The format is going to be a little different than it was before. Well, it's going to be a lot different. The old format was me conducting interviews, and I basically shelved it because life just got in the way. Many things happened. I went back to work. I had had various surgeries at the time, either on my back. I never made it public, but I was told once that I may never walk again. Thank God I'm fine now. Or my inguinal hernia. I had also built this nifty little recording studio in my closet where I'm sitting right now because I had intended to make audible versions of my books, which is a great project when you're unemployed. But once you go back to work, you just don't have the time. My wife Jennifer sadly passed away last November from COVID, leaving behind 2 devastated children and all that entails. And I've basically become Mr. Mom. So, long story short, I have much less free time than I used to. So, what is this new format? Well, it's going to be even more egotistical than it was before, because it will basically just be me. I'm pretty much just going to speak off the top of my head. I'm not going to really prepare. I may have some thoughts or ideas that come to mind. I'm not exactly sure how long I can sustain that for. This is more of an experiment than anything, and it might evolve. I might have an interview or two in the future, but understand doing so requires a lot more work. Not only do you have to get a time when everyone is available, you have to arrange some sort of phone call unless you do it in person. I actually would record it on 2 separate laptops. One would be for me, and the other one would be for my guest, and then I would have to synchronize them and edit them together. So the question remains, why am I doing this? I could make up some altruistic reason, like, oh, the world is one huge mess today, which it absolutely is. But it's like my point of view is not actually going to help that in any way, shape, or form, let's be honest. It may just wind up creating more division. Or people could listen to it and feel that they're not alone, or that I'm giving them some new perspective or view that they never thought of before. But honestly, I'm just doing it for fun. I like the sound of my own voice. I want to see how well I can come up with a stream of thoughts and feelings and have it actually be in some way intelligent or relatable. So thank you for being here. I'm so used to recording things in speech to text, that's usually my style for writing out, that when I'm talking like this, I want to say period after every sentence. So yes, as I said, the world is in a big mess right now. America is in a big mess. There were those who thought that America was in a big mess before, and it was, and said, oh, this is the wrong direction. Now the direction we're going in is the right direction. There are those who feel that the direction we are going in today is plummeting us off of a cliff, of which there may be no return. Who is right? Who is wrong? I don't know. It comes down to ideology. Now, if you're wondering, what is ideology? Ideology is the grouping of thoughts and feelings and emotions and values and beliefs into an us versus them camp. We find the groups that are for our side. If somebody thinks the way we think, then they're on our side. If they don't think the way that we think, then they're against us. And there's so many examples of this. It's our sports teams, our religions, and our politics. I try very hard to have ideals instead of ideology. Ideology is a hypocritical betrayal of the ideals that the ideology was based upon. And this whole us versus them ideological view is just tearing our country apart. I mean, I get it. I understand how the Democrats, I used to have friends. Okay, I have to be honest here. This is my second take. Because at first I was going on an anti-Trump rant, and I can't stand him. He's a horrible human being. But you know what? I'm tired of talking about him. And I understand people will say, well, that's part of the plan to wear you down. But seriously, not everything in my life. You ever notice that? You ever think about someone who hurt you or someone who upset you or someone who angered you, and you sit there and you say, why am I wasting? This is my time. This is my life. Why am I wasting it giving these people any of my valuable mental space? Now, I understand that with what's happening in the country, it's different, it's important, and I'm not advocating hiding your head in the sand or being silent about it. Of course, everybody, hey, you do you. Please. And there will be times in the future when I will talk about him, but not today. There's enough real life that's interesting. How about dreams? Anybody out there interested in dreams? We can get into politics later. Let's talk about dreams. I used to have all kinds of dreams. I used to be very good at lucid dreaming. I used to have a lucid dream a week. Now I feel like I've almost completely lost the knack. I think it stems from how much attention you pay to it. I was really into dreams, and not from a mystical point of view, but from a scientific point of view. I wanted to know what was inside of my head. To me, the best video game in the world would be able to jack my subconscious into a computer and walk around in a virtual reality world. And this is, of course, the basis of a few of my novels. To me, that would be the ultimate game, because I want to know myself. I want to see what's in there. I want to find things out. So I had a dream last night that I was at my maternal grandmother's house. I was with my daughter, and one of my cousins came over, and he pulled out a rifle, and he started shooting at gang members who were rushing towards the house. They were wearing orange jumpsuits, and they rushed towards the house. My grandparents' house had a balcony, so they scaled up the wall and over the balcony, and they managed to get inside, and they laid all of us down on the floor. Now, you know how weird dreams are. It starts out with 2 people. Now you have a party of 6 or 7. And they confiscated all of our phones. This was all about stealing our cell phones. And my poor daughter was so terrified and didn't understand what was going on, and I just kept telling her, like, shh, just lay on the floor, and everything will be okay. It was a really strange dream. I often have dreamt about my grandparents' house. My grandparents lived in this great 3-story house in Brooklyn. My aunt and uncle lived downstairs, my grandparents lived in the middle, and my great-grandmother lived on top. And I once had a dream. I've actually had a few dreams that took place there. One of them was that in my great-grandmother's closet was a sort of a zip line device. It was vertical, and it zipped me up high into the sky to a complete other apartment that was much larger and much fancier. This was a few years ago. This wasn't when I was a child. This was, she's been long gone for 40 years now, I think. And I remember searching around this apartment looking for anything interesting to justify this hidden zip line upwards, but I couldn't find anything. And it was really distressing. So back to last night's dream, something I remembered was that the gang members wanted me to read something. And it was printed on a very fancy cloth-like paper with all kinds of blue and green patterns on it. It was like holding a large dollar bill. I had a very hard time reading the text, and this is usually a sign that you're dreaming. If you're into lucid dreaming, it's very hard to read things. And not being able to read it gave me a sensation of panic because I was afraid that if I didn't read it correctly, that they would harm me or my daughter. And that's really all there is to that dream. Sometimes dreams, it's not even the conclusion of them, it's how vivid they are. I've had dreams where they felt so incredibly real, where I saw spaceships coming out of the sky and thought, wow, this is amazing and this is real, but they turned out to be dreams. The human brain is so fascinating in the ways it works. I don't even know, in the end, if scientists have ever actually come up with a reason for dreams. There's all kinds of guessing, there's all kinds of speculating. And that's the fun of it. When scientists don't know something, you can make up whatever sort of thing you want. You can take the multiverse theory, that it's a combination of the different lives. You can take the more scientific approach and say, well, it's probably just all the little bits of your subconscious. But I think it's really interesting how there are dreams I had when I was a child that I still remember. I once had a dream. I grew up in a place called Basking Ridge, New Jersey, and one of the nearby roads to my parents' house was Lyons Road. If you know the area, you know what I'm talking about. It goes over to Liberty Corner, and I dreamed that there was a tunnel underneath, and I walked through this tunnel, and Ziggy lived there. Ziggy, the old... I don't even know if Ziggy still exists. Ziggy was, or maybe still is, a one-panel comic strip. And it was never particularly hysterical. He was just there, and he never was really one of my favorites. I mean, Bloom County was my favorite, and when I was younger, all of those, Hagar the Horrible and Beetle Bailey and all of that. But Ziggy was just there. And for whatever reason, in my dream, Ziggy lived in a little sort of hobbit hole off the tunnel, and he was very friendly, said hello to me on my way. It's amazing what things reside in our subconsciouses. I often have dreams about driving, and I wonder if that's supposed to be a metaphor for life, because sometimes the car itself is completely out of my control. I have no brakes, I can't steer. Sometimes I'm trapped in the back seat, and no one is driving in the front, and I'm scrambling to get into the front seat. And I have so many dreams like that I can't help wondering if it's a metaphor for my life. Do I feel that my life is out of control and nobody's driving it, or that when I do drive it, the steering wheel doesn't work, the brakes don't work? Sometimes I'm dreaming that I'm driving and I can't even keep my eyes open, and I say, why the hell aren't I just pulling over? I'm on the verge of falling asleep. Would I then go into some sort of meta-dream if I slept within my dream? Dreams are awesome. I think it's wonderful that there are things... I love science, first of all. I'm a huge proponent of science. Let me make that clear. I absolutely think that the road to hell is this turn to the dark ages that we are currently facing. I am absolutely all for science. We'll get more into science versus theology and politics in another episode. That's not the point. But I do find it beautiful that there are things, there's like a sort of a why bedrock, I call it, when scientists can't really figure out any further past that point. I call it the why bedrock. Why do we dream? We have ideas, but we're not sure. And I think that's great. Why does mass warp time and space in the force we call gravity? Why does 1 + 1 = 2? There's just some bedrock whys. And it's important that we keep asking. It's important that we don't just say, well, we don't know. It's a why. We don't know. We've reached why bedrock. We can't dig any further. It's important that we keep asking and we keep wondering. And yes, we keep using our imaginations. Because that's the only way we're going to advance. That's the only way advances have ever been made. Sometimes people get angry if you ask a why that questions their reality. Yeah, strange little dreams. I will end this with the reminiscence of a dream I had when I was a child, and maybe the fact that I've often recalled this is why it stuck so much in my memory. I dreamt that my father was going to be executed by gigantic bumblebees. He was going to be stung to death by gigantic bumblebees because he had stolen for me a can of bumblebee tuna. And there was a sense of dread. There was no graphic execution within the dream, but it was the sense of dread that, nope, sorry, this is it. He has broken our most sacred law. He has stolen the bumblebee tuna and must now face death. So I guess that says a lot about my mental processes as a child. We'll get more into that another time. So, thank you all so much for being here if you made it to the end of my little stream of consciousness experiment. I may change it up in the future, but thank you again. There are so many different types of videos you could be watching, right? There are reaction videos where someone takes a 5-minute video and spends about 20 minutes gasping about it. One type of video my kids are watching at the moment, I don't know if it's what the Koreans call mukbang exactly. It's some jackass stuffing his face with about 15,000 calories from fast food. I don't know what the attraction is. I could do that. I could very easily just stuff my face and get a gazillion views and get a gazillion likes and people clicking on my advertising. I don't know. I guess I'm barking up the wrong tree. I don't have any advertising. Maybe I should. I should just advertise my own products, my own self. That would work out well. But then I'd have to keep flashing advertisement in the corner of the screen. Advertisement, just so everybody knows. Which is a good thing. Mukbang. That's like this Korean one where people overgorge themselves with food, right? I guess dieting is out. I'm drinking zero sugar ginger ale. Everybody's afraid of the word diet. It's like Coke is Coke Zero now. The word diet soda went out. I'm sure George Carlin would have had a whole rap on that if he were still alive. So anyway, I have to say, once again, thank you so much for listening to the Egotistical Podcast. Hopefully there will be many more of these. If you want to learn more about me, please check out www.egotisticalproductions.com. I have lasagna.